Welcome to The Truth in This Art. I am your host, Rob Lee. Thank you for tuning into my conversations at the intersection of arts, culture, and community. Today, I'm going to be a bit more transparent and let you guys know that there are few things that I enjoy more than professional wrestling, from the storytelling, the athletic prowess, and just watching legends do their thing. Wrestling is where it's at for me. And today, I am privileged to speak to a professional wrestling announcer, interviewer, commentator, recognized for his ring announcing. He's a Hall of Famer and a Price is Right winner. Please welcome the great Larry Legend. Welcome to the podcast.
From one announcer to another that has had, dabbled, of course, mostly with the ring introductions, but also the commentary when you're sitting down. That was a legendary intro, Rob. That was a legendary intro, and I think you said it all. So thank you for having me, and I'm glad to be talking to you.
Thank you. It was funny. I was in a different Zoom because I was like, sometimes when I switch the dates, the Zoom's dying, and I'm in the other one, and I did one, and in it, I was like, I feel like he's going to do this better than me.
Well, no. I mean, I'm at the point in my career now where I'm being introduced a lot. This is kind of becoming part of the course. Myself, having started in the wrestling business as an announcer, introducing others, I'm now 21 years in, really relishing being on the receiving end of the introduction and kind of giving the, hey, that's my role. My role is to make you attentive and engage in whatever is coming out of my mouth. And now I love it when someone gives me a good intro, when they're not like stumbling over whatever, or like, clearly reading online, like my Wikipedia or, whatever. And I've been on interviews where someone is clearly like just reading my IMDb bio or something. And I'm like, oh, okay, I know what this, whatever. So thank you for that. And I'm glad to be here.
Absolutely. And in that vein, right, of sort of the IMDb bio and the online bio, what I find in doing all of these interviews, like I'm coming up on 800 interviews for this podcast, right? And I find that when I get information from the guests, there's always something missing, something inevitably missing that really shows and peers into sort of the soul of who the person is. So I want to give you the space to introduce yourself. Maybe there's something I left out. Maybe there's something you want to add, but tell us a bit about yourself and a bit about your work.
Sure. Well, I mean, you laid it out. Bingo, bango. You set the table. If the listeners or viewers want to eat now, I will say that I am the overall Grand Master of Ceremonies, Larry Legend, CZW Hall of Famer, Price is Right winner, and just all around legendary figure in the combat sports realm. I've done shows at Madison Square Garden, where Donald Trump, former president of the United States, has sat behind me. I've done a lot.
Yeah. And
in between doing that, I connect with people just in everyday walks of life, like you, Rob. Yeah. And in doing that, that's why I'm here right now. So I would just say that if there's a 1-2 punch that I like to do with my own intro, it's that I'm in a recognized Hall of Fame, and that I won the Price is Right, because when you go out there and you introduce yourself as Larry Legend, or someone says, "Oh, this is Larry Legend," well, a lot of times people will be like, "Well, what's so legendary about you?" What makes you legend? Well, I mean, I got a couple plaques, a couple trophies, a giant head of myself, and I'm right here on this podcast right now, so that checks a couple boxes.
100%. And if for a brief period, and you're making me want to dive back into it a little bit, it was the legendary Rob Lee. That's what it was for a while. And I was like, nah, let me bring it down a little bit. Let me, I don't want to, but no, you're making me bring it back a little bit. I feel like
you kind of told your own tale of the tape there with 800 episodes. I do a podcast of my own, or I'm a co-host of a podcast of my own. And just last night, we celebrated our 100th episode.
Congrats.
Thank you. But, I've got to say, I don't know if I can last 800 of these things. Like if we are at the milestone of 100 right now, and I'm dedicating 2 hours of my life every Tuesday, and that's, Rob, why I never did a podcast of my own. It's because it's the dedication that I feel like everyday life would get into. And there are some people with like really popular podcasts, and I'll go on podcasts on Apple, and I'll see their last like podcast was from like June of last year.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm like, whoa, what happened? You obviously grew a fan base, and this is content for the people to go back to, but I'm all about the live, like what's going on right now. Talk about topical things, as well as what's going on in wrestling or whatever. So, that's pretty legendary to have 800 under your belt. So I don't know, maybe you should lean into that a little bit more and really stand up proud.
You're probably right. And it's interesting, like, in doing this, and I usually start off getting a sense of where the person is at now, but really where it started. So
Sure.
When did you first become interested in wrestling? Not even in being involved, just in wrestling. Like me, we're probably in a similar age group. Me was obviously Attitude Era for me.
Okay.
And but my mom was really into it, so it's probably a little bit earlier, like whenever WWE had those Saturday night shows, well, WWF at the time had those Saturday night shows, my mom was putting me onto that. So it's probably way, way back, golden era style. But that's when I first became interested in it. And for you, when did you become interested in wrestling? And then when did it lead to this sort of, commentary, ring announcing, things of the sort?
I guess I first got into wrestling when I had the toys. And this is something that I've caught on to, is really kind of the hook of pro wrestling in America. It's kind of morphed a little bit more into the video games, but it is getting the actual figures in your hands to mimic what you're seeing on the TV. That kind of makes a correlation that, when you're doing a suplex with your Andre the Giant and Hulk Hogan, like, that's amazing. That's an amazing feat to be, for one human being to be doing to another human being. And then you see that on the TV and you're like, they're doing this thing. Yeah. They're actually doing this thing in front of a bunch of people that are screaming, and this is on TV. So I feel that after all of the time that I can look back on what made Larry Legend, I can say that it was the first time that I had the action figures and I can replicate on TV what I was seeing with these things in my hands, is what really kind of hooked me, as we call it in the industry. That's what hooked me into wanting to watch it, into wanting to get more action figures, into eventually, around Attitude Era, getting a bunch of my friends to do it. Yeah. That's right. My real origin story is in backyard wrestling. And a lot of the stars that you see on AEW and WWE and all Impact Wrestling, a lot of them were so captivated by what they were seeing on TV and what they were doing with their action figures or what they were doing with the games, that they were able to just get friends that were probably watching it with them and playing the game with them and playing with the figures with them to, let's do this, whether it was like on the mattress or down in the basement, or in my case, in my backyard, in the house, my mom's house that I grew up in. My mom allowed me to get my friends together to put some old gym mats down in really what was her front yard, but had the more space that was conducive to like an arena type setting. And around Attitude Era, and I'm talking WWF WrestleMania 2000, WWF No Mercy for the N64, around the time of those games, was when I was really able to like say to my friends, my compadres, like, hey, we could do this. We could pretend that we're Crash and Bob Holly with the tag team titles, and we're fighting Big Show and whoever. We can pretend, and we can record it and watch it just for fun.
Yeah.
And that just grew and grew and grew to the point that we were doing regularly scheduled shows in the backyard that
Really?
led up to pay-per-views. I'm talking episodic filmings
Yeah.
of things that led up to pay-per-views that would actually get a few people from the neighborhood who would just kind of hear the ruckus going on and be like, what's going on? And we would have people that from the neighborhood would come out of their homes when we would do the backyard wrestling, and they would watch right there at the fence, or someone would be brave enough and come on down. We'd invite them down. But yeah, it started from the toys and realizing that these feats that we were watching before our eyes were real. These are things that people can learn to do, can be trained to do. And again, just seeing like the crowd and everything, like the money that can be made off of this, off of people like wanting to see this and buy the toys and the games. I want in. I want in.
So then that's good. You're really capturing sort of this moment. I can, this time frame, because it's crystallized for me where I'm thinking back to that era, middle school years for me, being there at like Hollandtown out there, Baltimore, what have you. And we had factions from each Fed, from the major Feds, WCW and WWF. I betrayed my compadres. I went from being our DX faction and our like Fed at Highlandtown to being in the One Finger Nation. We didn't do One Warrior Nation, One Finger Nation. We were just crotch chopping. We were jerks, but we would have.
Oh, we were too. We were too. Like, no. I mean, listen, sophomore Beavis and Butthead. You know what I'm saying? It's that era. We were South Park, rather. I'm a little older than I bet you than you, but yeah, I get it.
So I remember it was one time where we had this essentially like a Royal Rumble. We had these huge, like it was an old the school we were in was really huge, and just certain things had like sizes that don't make sense. Like, you'd have like, a bathroom that has your different stalls in there. It was like a big open, almost like just nothing but showers. You would think we were in a gym, but it was the cafeteria floor. So it was a huge sort of bathroom setup there. And it was just like, 11:15, we're doing a Royal Rumble. So everyone that was part of this thing, this wrestling fed that we had, we were just in there getting it, just super kicks flying, all types of ridiculous stuff. We got into so much trouble, but we were doing it at school. But it was just, you see your friends, you're doing the wrestling thing. And we were all at that sort of impressionable age where I can do anything. Dudes doing moonsaults and all types of wild stuff. This was, marble floors. It wasn't, we had no crash pads.
I mean, it's interesting that you bring that up about like kind of the recklessness that we all had for our bodies. When you think of the Walmart guys, I'm sure you're familiar with the Walmart guys, these guys who just like go into Walmarts, I don't know where, and like just like we'll start like doing like acai moonsaults off of the fixtures and Michinoku drivers on the thing where the where you're the belt when you getting your stuff checked, and I'm like, whoa. They really look like they're hurting the shit out of each other. They'll take super kicks and do flip bumps on linoleum. And I'm like, that's just feeling some of the effects of doing it in my backyard on a thin mat.
Yeah.
I'm like, that's great for all the likes and the views, but I know the human anatomy, and that ain't good.
See, the thing is, you met me in person, so you have a sense of my size, and I've always kind of been big. So I'm like, I'm not taking any bumps.
Yeah.
Like,
well, big men shouldn't take bumps, is the psychology of wrestling. Like when the big man finally takes the bump from a character like Hulk Hogan, then the audience reacts because they've seen this big man never taken off of his feet before.
Yes.
That's the psychology of wrestling. That's what made me believe that Yokozuna actually injured Hacksaw Jim Duggan back in 1993. When Hacksaw Jim Duggan was the first wrestler to actually knock Yokozuna off his feet. I mean, technically, Macho Man got him off his feet in the Royal Rumble when they were, but that was after. The taping of Hacksaw doing it was filmed before, but aired after. But Macho Man was really the first, like, image in WWF of someone knocking Yokozuna, the late great Rodney Anawai, of the legendary Anawahi wrestling family. First time he got knocked off his feet on TV, I saw Jim Duggan did it. And then because of that, when Yokozuna threw the salt in his eyes and attacked him, it was way more like, you son of a mother.
Yeah.
How dare you? How dare you? He did it with his own, So yeah, I don't know where I was going with this or what we were talking about, but yeah, a big man should not be knocked off their feet. Really is the psychology of pro wrestling.
And I think that's the other thing that, you're selling yourself a little short in your bio, what have you. You're a historian too. That's another thing you should have in there.
Well, I forgot. I mean, here's the thing. I've forgotten a lot. The times that impacted me to get to where I am right now, I have them all on VHS. Yeah. I immediately was like, this is one day going to be gone, or they're going to bastardize it and take the music out, which they've done. Yes. You WWE Network subscribers, you might have, Edge's debut, but I bet you don't have the actual music that Edge came out to in 1998 when he debuted, because there's been all this stuff with like LLCs and UMG music rights and things like that. So I have the authentic stuff that like got me into it. I taped it all, so this stuff I vividly remember. And also during this era, I caught up on a lot. So I got a lot of old stuff too. I would go to old Blockbuster videos or Errol's videos, if anybody knows those names. And they would have like pay-per-views that were at one time rentable on sale for like $4.99. I would get like Survivor Series 1989 for like $3.99. Now this is a tape that if you got from WWF at the time was $49.99. But if you knew to go to Blockbuster or Errol's Video or Movie Sales or one of those places, you could go to their like bin and just find like all kinds of old stuff.
Yeah.
On tape. So, I did learn a lot, but I've forgotten so much now. Pretty much from the time that I really became Larry Legend and started actually doing shows, actually having to like remember Human Tornado and Ruckus and, Leo Rush and all of these like actual intros. It's like my actual like WWE and WCW and Impact knowledge is kind of like, that happened. Yeah. I remember when Jarrett's show was a thing, because I wasn't really watching as much then. I was more doing. So yeah, I guess you could say I'm somewhat of a historian.
So talk a bit about the part, specifically when it comes to being a voice, whether it be in the announcing side, being in the commentating side. And the reason I ask about this, I forget what I was watching. This was maybe about a year ago. I was watching a streamer and I was like, I know this dude. And noticed the voice. And I was like, because I remember you from ROH. And I was like, I was like, I know this dude, and you were cutting up on commentary. I was just like, this is a Baltimore dude.
Oh, yeah. Oh, well, so I got to tell you something.
Yeah.
Rob, I've wanted to sit down and do commentary for so long. but I learned very early on that commentary chair is very coveted. When you get your feet planted down, I'm talking JR, Jerry the King, even Taz in today's age, when you get your feet planted down and all you got to do is come there and sit down, okay, that becomes kind of like, and I'm getting paid for this. Nah, I'm good enough. I'm going to make sure the promoter always has me. So I have done a lot of ring announcing to finally now be kind of like recognized as like a pretty decent commentator. And now I'm getting more and more opportunities to commentate. And XPW always uses me as commentator. VXS kind of really used me a little bit. GCW did as well. I started doing things with IWA Deep South, and they have me both ring announce and commentate. So yeah, it's fun to stretch out my legs after all these years.
It's wonderful. So what does the preparation look like between, doing the announcing versus doing the commentary, being there, that coveted seat? Because it's different. It's a skill set, and I think people don't really get it. Like when, let's say you do an interview, because that's part of the background as well. People think just anyone with a microphone can do an interview, and as you touched on when we started, there's some people who read the Wikipedia and just try to craft something. So talk about sort of the preparation and then, some of those early instances where you went into being on mic, as far as in wrestling.
Well, when I first started, I didn't want to mess up at all. So I would spend a lot of time like getting to know guys in the back. I mean, even I'm sitting here at my desk. I have my like little black book, this little black book. I have 2 volumes of these, right? Yeah. And these little black books have like so many different wrestlers' intros, hometowns, monikers, accolades. There's so many like tournaments that I've announced where I had to know this person, beat this person, then beat this person to get to the finals and things like that. But I hate to toot my own horn, but my prolificness in wrestling, just like existing in so many different circles on the indies, has made me like super knowledgeable about a lot of guys that I see regularly. So I can mention names like A.R. Fox, the good guy Azrael, Grim Reaper, Dan Moff. There's so many guys that I have seen for the past 21 years, whether it be here in Maryland, in New Jersey, when I was a New Yorker. So now it's almost like there's certain guys where when I see they're on the show, I don't even have to approach them. I'm like, all right, I know him. I know his intro. I've done it like a million times. I don't need to prep. But when I first started, I used to like get all the notes and find out the ways to say it and, find out the stipulations for the matches. Now, at this point, I can pretty much freestyle a lot of stuff. There'll be times where I don't get a chance to talk to a guy in the back. So I see him coming out and I'll have to like look on Wikipedia right there in the ring to like see like, oh, where's this guy from? Or like, what are some things I can say about him? And I just have that technology right there in the palm of my hands. But, I'll tell you a challenge is, when I do the announcing, it's a lot from the diaphragm. It's very big. It's very grandiose. But then when I sit down and I do the commentary, I kind of can't turn that off. I kind of cannot flip the switch to now being like, oh, and I'm in a conversational mode right now. We're watching pro wrestling. I've just gotten out of the ring. I've just announced the Necro Butcher or the Human Meat Grinder Schlack, and I've just rung hell's bells. Yeah. Okay? People are clapping and applauding and ready for this. And when I sit down, I'm usually like still humming. I'm usually like still like rocking off of what I just did. So you think it's easy for me to then kind of talk and like kind of comment? No, I'm like, oh, we're about to tear this up. I felt it in the ring, Ron. I felt the energy between these two combatants. So that has been hard because, it does wear on my voice.
I can imagine.
It does wear on my voice, So a lot of the times if I've got a 3-hour show to do and I'm doing the commentary and the announcing, it wears on my voice. And there have been times where I've actually had to bail and only been able to do one. As legendary as I like to call myself, I am still a human being. Yeah. And there have been times where, because I'm so good at what I do, I'm also so excited about what I'm doing, where I've just gone beyond my limits. And I've had to like just say, listen, you over here, I know you're an announcer, upcoming announcer, take this headset. You're doing the commentary. I'll just do the announcing for the remainder of the night. And no one's going to tell me no. Yeah. I know what I'm doing. I've been doing it for 21 years, going on 22 years. So yeah, that's, preparation was very, very kind of, intense at first, but now 21 years in, I got this. It's like a layup. Everything's a layup.
I love it. So when you think back, because I think, there's this sort of like side, like, when I look at those wrestling highlights, whether it be, or any sporting highlight, right? It's about the call, it's just like, man, like, like Buckner missed the baseball or Stone Cold, all of the stuff, right?
Yes. Yes.
Accompaniment is almost as important as the athletic spectacle. So how do you incorporate elements of like storytelling and drama into your commentary to enhance sort of the viewer experience?
Great question. If you want to talk about announcing, I'm talking about ring announcing, emceeing, like calling them out. I always love when the guys give me more. I always love when the guys have like multiple monikers, or they have like a very kind of like embellished way that I can announce them. I kind of really took off in wrestling by being the personal announcer for Ruckus, Baltimore's own, multiple time Hall of Famer, indie worldwide, global, international sensation. But the way that I used to announce him was he was the Jake the Snake of getting baked, the Teddy Long of hitting the bong. Okay, the Vinnie Mac of the dime sack, the Michael Hayes of Purple Haze, the Chris, and there were all these rhyme couplets that dealt with cannabis culture.
Yeah.
That was really my way that I was able to kind of establish myself as a voice. Yeah. So when it comes to ring announcing, I always say to the guys, give me more. You're from the seventh circle of hell. Oh, I love that. And you're, evil as flesh, Michael Kruger. That's so much more for me to color with my voice to paint this picture than if I just said, and his opponent from Los Angeles, California, Michael Kruger. No, you're from the seventh circle of hell. That's what's coming out of my belly right now before you do battle. So that for the announcing, for the commentating, it's really just knowing the story. Mm-hmm. So when I'm there, I know these guys again from over 21 years. I can talk about, Schlack's he's no stranger to ultraviolence. His story comes from CZW, which is a place where I first met him, where I first used to announce him. And all of the fans that have followed indie wrestling and know me, they know I know what I'm talking about. So I really can kind of build the story just by being knowledgeable about what Kevin Owens is or Kevin Steen's origins were with Roddy Strong before they were both in NXT, knowing that Sami Zayn was El Generico, all of these little things that I was there for. I can bring that to the booth, and promoters recognize that now.
Is there a voice that you think of, not necessarily to ape or kind of model what you're doing after them, but one that you get that inspiration from? I have inspirations for this podcast and how I approach and how I ask questions, and sometimes I've been able to actually interview some of them, which has been really cool and almost surreal. So is there a voice that make up sort of combat sports macroly speaking, or wrestling specifically, that you're I really like how they do this, I really like how they add this flourish, I like how they approach their job and being a voice?
I'm going to mention a couple names right now, and it is a great question because if you know wrestling jargon, at the end of the day, regardless of who I say I am, I'm a mark. I'm a mark, okay? I'm a mark for it. And there were times where someone like a Lillian Garcia from WWE, when she really got it, and was at the top of her game, there were times where matches that I wasn't even invested in because she brought that to the table. I'm like, oh, Lillian just set it off. Lillian just set it off. So she's one that I find inspirational. Of course, Michael Buffer.
Yeah. Of
course, Michael Buffer, because Michael Buffer was the first one to kind of establish that catchphrase of that signature thing that you hear that's now in hip hop and movies and kids, radio ads, his signature phrase that is his. He owns it. It's copywritten.
Yeah.
No one else is going to say that but him. That's why I won't even say it right now on your cast. But that he is definitely an inspiration. Also, really inspirational to me as a young child to see someone, or a coming of age teen, see someone from boxing appear on wrestling. Yeah. It brought a level of legitimacy to me. Even though I wasn't really a big WCW mark, but when they used to bring Michael Buffer out to do Hogan versus Flair, and he wouldn't do the whole show, he would just do the title, bro, that to me was oh man, this shows me that the announcer role exists in all types of combat sports. And you can take the announcer from boxing that we are used to seeing announce Mike Tyson and Evander Holyfield. You can bring him into wrestling. Yeah. And that takes the whole wrestling feel up to another level. So definitely Michael Buffer. I know I'm being really long-winded, but his brother Bruce. You watch those UFC shows, and Bruce gets to that main event, and those lights come down, and those spotlights go on him, and he has that card, and he's sweating, and he's talking about this guy in this corner who has this record. Bro, you hear the people start to clap. Granted, they're clapping for whoever Bruce is about to announce, but those claps, they are the soundtrack to this role of announcing.
Yes.
And people like Michael Buffer, Lillian Garcia, Bruce Buffer, both of the sisters in WWE right now. Congratulations to Alicia Taylor. I just heard that she got bumped up from NXT and she's replacing Mike Rome on Raw. Alicia Taylor. And Ricochet's girl. I'm sorry.
Samantha Irvin.
Bro. Oh my gosh. Oh my gosh.
Huh?
Mania, bro.
Yes.
The Rumble. They bring this kind of like drag and growl. This kind of like drag and growl to their shit. And it's like they're not just announcing, but they're eating up the entire arena through this microphone. And that to me is inspirational.
Oh yeah.
So all of those names I just mentioned, Michael Buffer, Bruce Buffer, Alicia Taylor, Samantha Irving, Lillian Garcia. A lot of women in there. Yeah. If you notice, a lot of strong women in there. Really? Yeah, those are the inspirational voices to me.
That's wonderful. Wow. So I want to segue a little bit into sort of other creative interests that you have that kind of influence your approach to your work in wrestling and combat sports, because that's the thing. I think like what makes us unique are these other things that we have that are kind of like side things, side projects. Like, were you a singer at one point? Like, what were those sort of side projects that or side influences that kind of inform your work in announcing and commentating?
Well, acting. Yeah. Acting. I lost my grandmother, who kind of was like my mom in a lot of ways, because my mom worked 2 jobs. So my grandmother was the one to receive me from school, feed me, make sure I was doing my homework and everything. And she passed away in 1993. And around that time, my mom had kind of like acknowledged that like they were always kind of putting me up front at like the pageants at school. Like, the Christmas pageant, I was always having some sort of role where I was like talking into a microphone or narrating something, or they were just always using me, using my voice. And she kind of nurtured that after I lost my grandmother and got me involved in community theater. And when I got involved in community theater, I did pretty okay with the learning of the lines, which is a direct correlation to, like I was mentioning, like some of these guys I know now. I know them now. I know their thing by heart. So that's kind of where that skill set developed. But then also, I would often be cast in roles like the Archangel of the Lord Gabriel, or the Royal Gatekeeper in The Wiz. I would often be cast in these roles where I was like coming out and doing some sort of big like flourish, or like I am on the stage, and I guess in a lot of ways I was like, well, this, I'm not asking for this. I'm not trying out for a lot of the times these roles, but someone is seeing something in me where they're like, this guy is the grand proclaimer of things in this show. He is the town crier. His voice just resonates as such that a lot of the roles that I got were very big. Also, in being in community theater, we would often do musicals. So I started getting trained in like pitch and tone, cadence, and all of those different types of things that now I apply to what I call riding the wave of an introduction, making it musical so that, everybody is unique in the way that they're presented. As unique as the music is that they come out to, the introduction has to like match that for this portrait to be painted. And this is all just my upbringing in the theater, doing community theater and traveling Shakespeare. That's where I learned about iambic pentameter and like kind of like the rhythm of life, that if you do it to the beat, people will pay attention. A lot of people don't understand that Shakespeare is so universal because of that beat that is to all of the words, even though the words are not what we speak right now, dialects and colloquialisms. typically, if you're watching a Shakespeare show, there's a rhythm that the actors are speaking to that you're like, oh, I get it. I see what's going on. He loves her. Oh, I get it. I see. He's jealous, you know? So that is also something that I picked up along the way that I've been able to apply to pro wrestling announcing and commentating that just works. And I think it resonates. And it's one of the reasons I've got 21 years doing it.
It's great. It's wonderful. And thank you. That's a good connection there. That, yeah, it's a plus there. Because I was like, you're a charismatic dude. You got a lot of energy, so it makes some sense. I was like, oh yeah, you're an actor. It makes sense.
Yeah, yeah. Well, I was actually pursuing maybe real acting, like Denzel Washington and stuff like that. In New York, I was a New Yorker for 10 years, and I was undergrad at NYU, studying acting at the Stella Adler Conservatory of Acting. And at the end of our second year, our guru was like, "Hey, I don't want y'all to waste your time. Some of you are destined to go on to do great things. Some of you will be struggling forever. So right now, at the end of your second year, I want you to listen to your heart and follow it." And as much as I love all forms of performance, theater, acting, musicals, all that stuff, pro wrestling is just the thing it's my thing. It's the greatest thing. So I dropped out of acting school and just joined it. I didn't just join a pro wrestling school. I wanted to get back involved into something that was performance based. But the words of our teacher that was like, "Don't waste your time. Don't waste your money. Follow what's in your heart. If you want to be a damn whatever, do it. Don't waste time up here now that you've done 2 years." And I really appreciate that, because 4 years of NYU, I would be even further in debt, out of it. So I appreciated that she did that. And that's kind of like when I was like, you know what? The acting that I like the best is pro wrestling acting. And you're going to be damned if you tell me that there's not a whole lot of it in it.
I mean, I had another question, but I think you got it. I mean, and that's a good spot for us to close on the real part of the podcast, the real part. But now it's time for the rapid fire part of the podcast. This is the real fun part of it.
Let's go.
And as I tell everyone, don't overthink these questions. So, the last thing that I went to, this is for just context. The last thing I went to NXT in Philly for WrestleMania and all of that stuff. And
this past 40.
Yes.
Okay.
And it's like I always go out with a particular buddy or what have you, and we always joke after we've we do the debrief, right? And we make fun of yo, that's a lot of people double fisting hot dogs and ice cream. And I was like, yo, I had French fries and beer at 10:30, and we'll talk about the food habits, right? What do you eat at a show? What is your go-to thing to eat at a show? I'm very curious about this.
So I am not as good. I am not as disciplined as I once was. But as an announcer, I would always have an apple. I would always have some cut up pineapple. I would often have grapes and other things like plums, things that would soothe my palate as we were doing the talking thing and I was, running my vocal cords raw.
Yeah.
Depending on which venue I'm in, hot water is not always as accessible and plentiful. But I do drink a lot of tea. I don't drink as much tea as I drink coffee, but I should. And my tea of choice is by Traditional Medicinals, and it's called Throat Coat, which is kind of a pun and double entendre. But yeah, I like Throat Coat by Traditional Medicinals. I have a box of that on me at all times. So yeah, those are the things that nowadays though I'm really like I said, I got to stretch my legs out. I'm commentating, so I like chicken tenders and French fries. Like if when we do a venue in Newark, New Jersey, the Hart Ballroom, and there's a place across the street called the Newark Cheesesteak, or it's just called Newark Cheesesteaks. Yeah. And I always get chicken tenders and fries from there. It's crap, Cisco food, but comfort food as well. But when I was actually doing shows in Madison Square Garden, in the theater at Madison Square Garden, if you ever looked at the table where I was sitting, you would often find fruit that I would be eating in between announcing, because the fruit cleanses your palate and also like soothes your vocal cords as you're out there giving the old heave ho.
That makes sense. That's a good one. It's a good one, and thank you. I was looking for
Yeah.
that sexy answer you gave. Either one's like, oh, this is chicken tenders and fries, but also it's like, look, if I'm doing this, it's got to be the fruit, and that's
Well, I'm
something
just
I'm going to
saying
apply for
now.
myself.
Like I'm thinking about now, and I was in Birmingham this past weekend. I had grapefruit on me. You know, I had all the things on me, but like I said again, I'm just like I don't want to say I'm lazy, but I'm just like I did a show in a field in Birmingham, Alabama. I'm not that concerned about my voice like faltering. You know, when I do a Muay Thai show in Brooklyn, New York, maybe I'm a little bit more disciplined about what I'm having before and after. So
Dig it. So here's one you touched on it a moment ago, and it's a circle because we met formally in this sort of setting. So I got to ask, how do you take your coffee?
black. Okay. Black. Okay. Black is best. Black is best. But
Yeah, right, brother.
I do like a little. I like art, and I like turning my black coffee like shades of like caramel or dirt. I like putting a little bit of oat milk in my coffee just because of the visual of the blackness.
Sure.
It is a very psychological thing that I like to experience. But typically, I just like it black. It's best that way. And sometimes I have to remind myself by not doing oat milk in my iced coffee or my hot coffee and just taking it black and just being like, oh, that's right. This is the thing that I like, you know. So that's how I like it, black and out of a French press, if available. I like French press coffee.
It's good. This is the last one I got for you, and
Sure.
this one is kind of shameless, but also kind of like, it's aspirational, right? So,
Yeah.
who is someone that you would love to introduce that you have not had the chance to introduce in your near 22-year career?
Jay-Z or Stone Cold. Both Sagittarius is both two that I very much admire and have acknowledged that they're like two of the greatest entertainers' minds. So to keep it in the realm of a Sagittarius, which is what I am, and consider myself one of the greats, to be able to lay it down, for either one of them. I guess always bet on black. It would be Jay-Z if I had to make a choice, out of two of those. But, I'm a wrestling guy. So that's why I got to kind of lean towards Stone Cold at the same time. I got to, because attitude, we're doing it in the yard, stunner. We know how to do it. Kick, boom. He said rock bottom. You know how to do it. So, yeah. Never announced Steve Austin, never announced Jay-Z, but those are two entertainers that if I
hear you.
My gosh.
I hear you.
Yeah.
Yeah. And that's kind of it for the questions. We got it. So there's two things I want to do to close out. Two things I want to do. One, I want to thank you for coming on and spending some time with me. And two, I would like to invite and encourage you to tell the listeners where they can check you out, your social media, website, any of that stuff, where they can hear your silky tones, hear that voice, see you out there doing your thing. The floor is yours.
All right. I don't know. So XPW Wrestling Stream, xpw.com is my primary wrestling company these days. So anything that I do bi-monthly, LA, Newark, New Jersey, where we were just talking about, it'll be streamed on streamxpw.com. Now, XPW is an extreme wrestling company. It is not for everybody. It is very bloody. It is very sexual. It is very offensive. But streamxpw.com, you can see me. My Instagram is at Real Larry Legend. It's actually my alternate Instagram that I set up while I was working for Ring of Honor, because Ring of Honor wanted me to be Larry Mercer, which is my given name. They wanted me to be Larry Mercer. So I set up a alternate Instagram at Real Larry Legend. On Facebook, I'm Larry Legend. There may be a few other ones, but I'm the one with the crown of threes. There are 3 threes over my head on my Larry Legend profile on Facebook. On YouTube, I'm Larry Legend. Again, there may be a couple of them, but somehow or other, Google was allowing me to secure Larry Legend as my YouTube, so I'm on there. Every Tuesday night from 7 to 9, I'm on YouTube on a podcast called Boulevard Bullies versus the World. It is myself, Pat, and Ringside Sean, and sometimes Bad Take Brian. We just basically, in a 4-way quadrant, talk about this, that, and the third when it comes to indies, the bigs, whatever. Very sophomoric, very not for everyone. So you can see me every Tuesday at 7 to 9 on YouTube on Boulevard Bullies versus the World. I think that's it. I also have a primary Instagram, but it's so difficult. Just go to Real Larry Legend, and I cross-share things on both of them. So, and Twitter or X, BLKLKP. Again, 3 BLKLKP is my Twitter. Follow me on there, although X is kind of not Twitter anymore. So, yeah, and I mentioned that I won The Price is Right. If anyone wants to watch that, go on to YouTube, Larry Legend on The Price is Right. All you have to do is type onto YouTube, Larry Legend on The Price is Right. A fan of mine happened to be watching The Price is Right that day. He voted and uploaded it right to YouTube. So you can watch my appearance on The Price is Right, where I won everything, including the Showcase Showdown for my mom. It was her birthday, and I wanted to do something special for her. So we went to LA, and I appeared on The Price is Right, and I get to do a little announcing on there.
So there you have it, folks. I want to again thank the great Larry Legend for coming on to the podcast. And I'm Rob Lee, saying that there's art, culture, and community in and around your neck of the woods. You've just got to look for it.